Okay, today we're going to talk about planning your evenings. Um, Depending upon, and so, by the way, some of this just may be common sense. You may already know this, and if you do, awesome, good for you. For others, maybe you just haven't thought about this. Maybe there's some dots that you haven't connected. You know, people are busy in their life, and they don't always have time to ponder some things. So hopefully, this is helpful to some. So, how are you going to plan your evenings to make sure that you're doing the best you can for your diet goals, and also so that you're going to have a good night's sleep, or the best night's sleep possible, or that you're not doing things that are going to negatively impact your sleep? Well, here's some ideas. I have seen success from people who will draw a line at night and say, like perhaps 8 p.m. is their line, and they will say, I'm not going to eat anything past 8 p.m. Okay? Now, depending upon what your sleep habits are and what time you go to bed, your line might not be 8 p.m. It might be 7. It might be 9. Whatever it is. Maybe it's 2 hours before you go to bed. Whatever that number is, draw that line and say, I'm not going to eat past that point. Now, how is that helpful? Well, first off, you should be eating enough food at dinner to get you through until breakfast. And if you're not eating enough, then you need to reevaluate how you're spending your calories during the day. Second of all, when we think about this furnace theory, the idea that you have to keep feeding your body food so it keeps burning the food, so that the body keeps working like a furnace, you would think, well, you know what? I need to eat something before I go to bed so that my body has something to burn overnight. Well, it doesn't work that way at night. When you're awake, absolutely, that's a great plan. But when you go to bed and you eat a whole bunch of calories, your body's not going to do anything with that because you're sleeping, right? Unless you get up and walk in your sleep and maybe jog around the house a little bit, those calories are going to go nowhere. They're going to stay with you. So eating food just before you go to sleep is not really a great idea. So some people will have great success by drawing that line and saying, hey, I'm just not going to eat anything past this period of time. So that's something that you may want to consider doing. Now, how can planning your evening help assure that you're not going to negatively impact your sleeping? Well, here's some ideas. First, we talked about cutting back on food before you go to bed, because sometimes, depending upon what you eat, that can impact falling asleep. Okay, you don't want to have a big meal resting on you as you're trying to fall asleep. Something else is to cut liquids so many hours before you go to bed, whatever that number is for you. And 2 hours before you go to bed, 3 hours, whatever. Just don't drink liquids. And the reason for that is you may need to get up in the night and relieve yourself, or maybe it's just going to make you uncomfortable during the night. Even though you're sleeping, you still may be somewhat uncomfortable from that. So you may find success making sure that you cut off liquids at a certain point. Another idea is to take a look at caffeine consumption. Now, I love to drink some diet soda at dinner time. But if I'm having a late dinner, that caffeine in the diet soda is going to prevent me from falling asleep when I go to bed. So pay attention to caffeine consumption and figure out in your circumstances, when do you need to cut out caffeine? Some people can't have caffeine past 3 o'clock because they're sensitive to caffeine. Some people can only take a little bit of caffeine. But if you haven't thought about what your caffeine tolerance is, that's something to consider. You don't want to be drinking soda or coffee or anything with caffeine in it up until you go to bed, because you're just going to toss and turn until that caffeine burns off. Another thing, maybe you haven't considered this, is working out before you go to bed. Now, in my case, I need to make sure that if I'm going to work out after dinner, that I can do that exercise and then cool down and recover at least 2 hours before I go to sleep. So my exercise has to end at least 2 hours before I head off to bed. If I don't, then my body is just still too revved up for me to fall asleep. 2 hours seems like an enormous amount of time, but that's just the way I'm wired. So I have to be very careful with evening workouts. So think about that if you're doing an evening workout and then finding yourself difficulty falling asleep at night, or maybe not having a good night's sleep. It could be because of that evening workout. Okay, so there's a couple of things to help you plan your evenings. Planning the evenings to help you achieve your goals, and also to help make sure you're getting you're not negatively impacting the rest and the sleep that you need. Hope this video was helpful, and come back tomorrow for another video.